Since the dawn of man, a war has raged. Should we watch anime subbed or dubbed? What's up, everybody? I'm Dustin, and today I am bringing you part 1 of my review for Digimon Adventure 01. Now, initially, I had planned on releasing the review as one complete video. However, I made it, I deleted it, I made it, I deleted it. I just kept not ending up happy or remotely satisfied with the finished product, and it felt like it dragged on far too long. So I decided to split it up into parts, and the first part is whether you should watch it subbed or dubbed, or rather just an analysis of the sub versus the dub. Initially, I didn't devote too much time towards this. However, since I'm giving it its own video, a lot more time should be devoted towards it. And initially, I wanted to say that people were making a big deal out of nothing, that it really doesn't matter whether you watch it subbed or dubbed. And, well, this might upset a few people, but that still is kind of true. However, Digimon is really weird, and whether you watch it subbed or dubbed, it really depends on what type of person you are. I am going to describe the differences, and I'm going to bring up some points, and by the end of this, I will hopefully be able to give you recommendations on when you should watch the sub, when you should watch the dub. If you're recommending it to somebody, should you recommend the sub or the dub? And naturally, if you already have your place in this war, if you live by the sub or live by the dub, then you don't really have anything to learn from this video in the context of what you should do. However, maybe through the course of this video, you'll be able to pick up a few points to help you with your own argument. So, before we speak directly to Digimon, because it is a 90s anime, which makes it somewhat unique, first I feel we should speak to the current war being raged between sub and dub. Like, currently with anime, how is the sub and dub viewed? And when we're not talking about Digimon, it's a lot more petty of an argument. Sub watchers will generally argue that the anime should be viewed in its original language, that jokes and certain minutiae are lost between cultures, and therefore the dub doesn't make as much sense. Meanwhile, dub viewers, the ones who actually make good arguments, will generally just say that they want to be able to multitask while watching the show, which is completely fair. However, sometimes you'll hear things like the vocals of the Japanese audio just really grates them, and you'll actually hear the same argument from the sub viewers. However, honestly, after not just watching a lot of subbed and dubbed anime, but also swapping between subs and dubs while watching a series, I think I've come up with a pretty good argument of why this is such a prevalent argument for people to have, why people are so fortified within their beliefs. And I know that anybody who has a strong opinion on this probably isn't going to pay this much mind. However, I believe that if you start watching a show in one language and then you listen to it in another language, if both the sub and the dub have really good voice actors, then you are going to hate the second one you listen to. And there's a reason for this, because a good voice actor will bring a lot more to a character than just bringing them to life. they are adding a new layer, a new identity to them. So when someone does a good job, you form what you believe that character should sound like. And if someone else does a really good job, then they're likely going to sound different. They're likely going to be portraying almost a different character, and that's obviously going to be upsetting. The first time I really experienced this, I started watching Fairy Tail dubbed, and I got really used to the voice actor. I thought he was doing a really good job as Natsu. And when I was forced to switch to the sub, I was disgusted by what I heard. However, giving it like 10, 15 episodes, I slowly acclimated and realized that the other voice actor was doing a really good job, and that it's just these differences that really become grating. However, if you normally watch anime subbed, but you start an anime dubbed, it actually probably won't be that bad for you, and you'll end up with one of those opinions where you end up telling people, yeah, this is one of the few examples of a dubbed anime that actually did it well, when that's not really the case. It's more so that you just started with it, and if you actually, a good experiment for people is to start with either the sub or dub, whichever they don't normally watch, and then halfway through the show, swap back. While you will have the mental hoops that you might jump through to protect your own opinions of which you find superior, you might end up feeling like the one you swap to is a little grating. Anyway, these minutiae, these differences between sub and dub are just some of the common ones. However, Digimon is obviously very different than the anime we get today, because back when Digimon was coming out, a lot of things had to be swapped. Death couldn't be directly said, or well, I can't say that it couldn't be implied. Alcohol couldn't be directly put in the show. And they also wanted to appeal to the Western audience. So we ended up getting like a lot of sassiness from all of the characters, a lot of cheesy jokes, a lot of stuff just thrown in. People constantly talk about how they want to fill any moment of silence with humor. And a lot of people feel that drags the anime down. So we're going to examine that. So first of all, I'll say with story beats, none of the story beats are changed. And for my source for all of this, I went to this master list site. Well, it's Tumblr. And I'll put a link to this in the description. But just to give a quick example of all of the differences, let's just click on any random episode. All of these, every paragraph you see is a difference between the sub and the dub. And they also didn't obviously go out of their way to point out every single time there was like a word change. But this was an extensive amount of reading. And I'm still saying there's not a very large difference between the sub and the dub, but we'll get back to that. So story beats, not a lot change. What really changes, there's some names that change, which isn't a big deal. There's the OST changes, that's actually a very big deal. Characters are somewhat altered, and obviously there's a lot of humor thrown into the English dub. So first of all, if you like cheesy 90s anime dubs with a lot of puns and whatnot, then I just highly recommend the dub. Meanwhile, if you really care about OSTs and background music and whatnot, actually, I shouldn't even be asking if you care about that, because even if you don't think you do, it's something that you really do. If you have ever found a moment in a show, a movie, or anything really impactful, go back to it. You'll realize that they're playing very precise music to amp that moment up, which I do think adds a lot to the sub, because the sub has a very intentional background music going on throughout most of the time, whereas the dub basically plays the same 5 songs or so throughout it, which is kind of bad. But as for the characters, I should just bring up the differences now. So Ty's not that different, TK's not that different. People say Matt has changed a little bit and that he's a little more off-putting to TK, but I don't actually believe that to be the case. I watched the dub without reading this list and seeing these differences, and I picked up right away that Matt was an amazing older brother. But people say that the dub ruined Mimi. However, and they believe this because in the sub she was more so just a normal girl who was put in a terrible situation and didn't want to continue with things, which is highly relatable. But in the dub, she's constantly talking about fashion and things along things of that nature. However, I will stand by Mimi being the most well-written character in the entire 01 series. And that's after I watched the dub. I'll talk more on that later. However, I do believe that the dub has, while the sub is a lot more straightforward with everything it's trying to say, because the dub has so many jokes and whatnot, the dub actually requires you to read between the lines more, and this may have unintentionally made better characters. Joe is changed somewhat just because Joe's character is very culturally driven. Because in Japan, there's a lot more respect for adults, and Joe is constantly looking for adults, and there's a lot more respect for seniority, and it's stated within the sub that he's a year older than everybody else. So he believes that he's under a lot more pressure to succeed and keep everyone safe, as well as him constantly going to cram school, because cram school wasn't a big thing in the West. So when he talks about school, it's just school in the dub. However, I think many of these things are carried over to the dub. It's just, once again, you have to read between the lines. He's constantly talking about school because he wants to be a doctor. You may not know he's talking about cram school, but the point still gets across. He's not talking about looking for adults so much in the dub. However, he is constantly worried about the situation they're in, and constantly worried about the after effects of all of their decisions. He's very neurotic in both cases. It just shows through more in the dub, and you have to piece together his character a lot more on your own. So that is another thing, that I believe that the dub is a lot better for people who want to take all of these hints and whatnot and formulate what they believe is going on, because all of the characters pretty much matched up to me after watching the dub and then reading about all these differences, minus Izzy. Because Izzy in the sub, He was a reclusive boy who didn't have very good social skills at all and was a tech wizard, and they played this off in the sub because of the culture of Japan is him being overly polite about everything all of the time. However, because in the West, the anime is a lot sassier, has a lot more humor. Instead of being overly reserved and kind, Izzy is still extremely reserved. However, he covers up his social insecurities by being sassy and witty. And honestly, even though this is considered a large character change, I don't think it's as bad as people might make it out to be, because these are both symptoms of the same issue, and honestly, I could see both of these character types growing up into the same person even within 4 years, as Adventure 02 shows. And moving on from Izzy, we have Sora, and Sora, I actually believe, got hurt the worst by the dubbing, even though her character honestly didn't change that much. And this is only because within the sub, within episode 4, it shows Piyomon being overly clingy towards Sora. And in the dub, we don't really get this. We don't see this overly affectionate character. We don't see Sora being put off by it and shoving her away. Now, later on, we do learn of Sora's insecurities and her misunderstanding of what it means to love another person, and that love is a two-way street. However, this kind of comes out of nowhere almost, whereas within the sub it's foreshadowed. And that foreshadowing definitely adds a little bit of depth to the character, I believe. However, again, in the end, it doesn't actually change very much. And finally, Kari. Kari's not that different. The biggest difference, I'd say, is the infamous episode 21. And if you don't know, episode 21 was directed by the same person who did the pilot of the Digimon series as well as our war game, and he is an amazing director who honestly puts the entire anime series to shame. But it's very infamous because within an interview he had over episode 21, they brought up Kari was a little overly caring about Tai, and he may have dropped a few times and a few different hints that they were actually in an incestuous relationship. Now, Kari's 8, Tai's 11. It's possible. I mean, the director is saying that it's the case almost. He was dropping hints. He wasn't directly saying it. So my takeaway is that, honestly, Kari just had a massive romantic crush on Tai, and this is shown throughout the entire Digimon series, all the way through Tri. But that romantic brotherly love that she has was definitely altered within the dub, and you just don't really see it that much. Even in 02, which I'm watching right now, Kari doesn't really come across like that. Like, no, there's not really any hints of it. They got rid of that. Another thing that sub-viewers apparently feel very strongly about in regards to shift in the dub is death. Like when Myotismon kills Gatsumon and Pumpkinmon, in the dub he says that he's banishing them to his prison or something along those lines. But again, I don't think this is a big deal, and part of the reason why is even though he said that and I had no indication that this was a big deal at the time, I just assumed he killed them. I assumed it was a metaphor for death, and especially understanding what they could and could not get away with within the dub. As long as you go in knowing those things, you'll generally understand when somebody just dies. Same with alcohol. People think that like Nanimon and stuff being changed due to the dub is like a big deal and affects the quality of the dub, but it's not. If you understand what's going on, you know what's going on, and it doesn't change anything. And so one of the reasons why I feel like people do say that the sub is so much superior to the dub, even people who aren't necessarily like fully on team sub, is that they watched Digimon as a child and they saw all these things, but then they grew up, they wanted to watch it again, so they ended up watching it subtitled this time because they're more into anime, and they grew a preference for subtitles, and they started noticing things that they may not have noticed as a child, and while they might have played some of it off to just being a child at the time, they may have ended up looking at it, wound up on the same site that I'm on right now, and saw this grotesquely massive amount of differences between the subs and dubs of Digimon. And seeing all of this just sent them kind of overboard and made them think that the dub was terrible. Although, again, the soundtrack being swapped is a really big deal because music is used to set a tone. If you don't have creepy music going on when something creepy is happening, it's not as creepy. If you don't have somber music going on when something sad is happening, it's not as sad. And however I think that there's actually a reason why the dub pretty much changed the soundtrack, why the dub has all of these jokes, and why it is how it is. So I do think that if we're talking about in terms of quality, the sub is better. But that doesn't mean that one should be watching the sub. And that may sound somewhat confusing, but to explain, quality and good writing is not entertainment. Quality and good writing is not the same as fun. So, someone who made controversial statements about a year or two ago, if you recall the movie Joker coming out, and the director, Martin Scorsese, yes, he made some controversial statements in regards to Marvel's movies, saying that they weren't theater, they were a roller coaster. And everyone bit his head off for these statements. But what he was saying is that sometimes you have extremely quality writing, and then sometimes you just have fun. Marvel movies are fun. You watch them, you're basically watching action figures beat the crap out of each other to really epic music. It feels good. It feels wonderful. Generally speaking, you're not feeling bad. You're not going to cry. I mean, sometimes they work those in, but honestly, Marvel movies are set up to feed into an addictive cycle where you go to the movie to see the next movie that you're going to go to. The biggest part of the Marvel movie is the after credits scene that sets up the next one. Meanwhile, the Joker is built on being extremely human, bringing out these emotions. But why am I talking about this? The sub is this quality writing. It's all of these emotions. It is, even though the dub does actually maintain some of them pretty well, but it is trying to go above and beyond the children's show that it is. Meanwhile, the dub, recognizing itself as a children's show, doesn't have the wonderful opening butterfly. It has the super catchy opening, and it has all these jokes, and all the music it plays is there to pump you up. And honestly, I'm not talking about the pilot, our war game, or any of that for the Adventure 01 review, but if I was, they are prime examples. When I watched those films, I thought they were amazing. I thought they were perfectly written, much better written than the anime. But when I watched the dub, when I watched Digimon the movie and I saw Bodemon blowing bubbles and it recreating the Digimon theme, I was dying. I was on the ground laughing so hard. The Digimon movie wasn't trying to be these masterpieces that the films that composed it was. It was trying to be fun. And so that's the thing, right? You think, well, should I go for the quality or should I go for the fun? And if you're like a really big Digimon fan, honestly, you should go for both. You should watch both of them at some point. However, even if, let's say you're recommending it to somebody and you know that they like quality shows, and this is your shot to get them into Digimon, and so you are for sure set on the sub train. Well, the thing is, that might not be the best decision. And the reason why is because Digimon isn't that good. Digimon really isn't that good. So, as good as it is at being fun, at being entertaining, even though it messes that up sometimes, as good as it is at writing its characters, and it is so good at writing its characters, it is amazing at writing its characters, especially the dub. The story is garbage. The story is really, really bad. If I had to give Adventure 01 a rating, I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10. If I had to give the sub a rating, I might give it a 6.5, maybe a 7 out of 10. And is that one point important? Why wouldn't you recommend the better one, the higher rated one? Because the 6 out of 10 is more fun. The 6 out of 10 is more entertaining. The reason why we're all into Digimon now is because as kids, we watched them evolve. We got all of the funny jokes. We thought it was hilarious. We saw the evolutions and the fighting, and it was like action figures bashing into each other, but with cool music playing in the background. Hey Digimon is an amazing song to get someone pumped up. Meanwhile, Braveheart, it kind of gets you pumped up, but it's more so like inspirational. Again, it has a sort of pretentious quality to it, which is something that's really cool for a fan to watch. But, or someone who is going to watch the subs. But more often than not, I would recommend the dub to somebody, unless they obviously don't like the amazing, cheesy dad 90s jokes of dubbed anime, because that is most of what Digimon 01's dub is. But, so, yes, recommendations. If you're watching it for the first time and you don't have a preference between sub or dub, and you don't have a preference between dad jokes or non-dad jokes, I'd recommend the dub because it's more fun, it's more entertaining. It's something that you can watch mindlessly and then enjoy and move on to the next piece of media that might honestly be a better, more quality piece of media. If you've already watched it dubbed, then I'd recommend watching it sub, because if you're coming back to it, then obviously you like the series to begin with, and you should explore the differences between the two, and this will give you a more quality experience that you might be able to enjoy more after knowing how the dub is. If you're recommending it to somebody, this is as simple as knowing their taste. If you don't know their taste, ask if they like 90s anime dubs. The answer is no, give them the sub. The answer is yes, give them the dub. If they're indifferent, give them the dub. If you've watched the series before, if you've watched the sub, even if you haven't watched the sub but you don't remember the dub, watch the dub again. Because, actually, only watch the dub again if you watch it through a critical lens, if you are looking to read between the lines. Because if you do not read between the lines, then the dub is absolutely awful. You won't understand what's going on with a lot of characters. A lot of things won't make sense. A lot of information will be put out there that you might take at face value and will serve you nothing but a headache as you move on. So I guess the point of this is that if you've watched it before, watch it in the language you haven't. And then maybe watch it again. It's not that good. It's not worth watching again. You should probably at least try to watch all of the Digimon content before you restart the series. Maybe play through the games. Digimon has a lot of media to explore. But I suppose that'll conclude my sub versus dub differences. Join me next time as I move on to discussing my favorite part of the Digimon 01 anime, which is the characters. Until next time, guys, stay wholesome. Hey guys, next time came sooner than we thought. So, first I wanted to say that I'm a liar. This is not going to be part one in a 3-part series of my review of Adventure. And there's a reason for that. So, I've been putting out a ton of content, but I'm kind of a perfectionist and I don't really like the quality of the videos I've been giving you. I want to do better. I want to eventually go back to everything I've done and revamp it. But for now, I still want to give all of you quality content. So I was thinking, how can I do everything that I want, still make it good for you, the community? Because that's what all of this is about. I want the Digimon community to thrive, and I want to talk about stuff I like. So what I've decided is that while I work on my video editing skills, or possibly hiring a video editor at some point, a little bit of A, a little bit of B, I'm going to start involving the community more in my videos. So if you're watching this, chances are you've seen some of my other videos. You may have seen the Spotlight series, where I take important figureheads from the Digimon community or other Digimon content creators, and I shine a light on them and we talk about them. I'm still going to do that. But I also want you, the community, to feel more involved. I want you to get more ingrained with the Digimon community. I want you to feel like it's a home for you and to feel a bond with the others. And so one of the steps I'm going to do to make that a reality and whatnot is I'm going to start offering invitations for anybody to join me in discussing these things. So I'm still going to do the Adventure 01 review, but I want you, the community, to be a part of that. I want to bring people into all of my videos. So when I talk about Adventure 01, I will be bouncing ideas back and forth with one of you. When I talk about the TCG game, I'll be discussing it with somebody. This won't be necessarily like the community spotlights. I won't be shining a light on each individual member. I mean, that one day could hypothetically be a goal, but I will allow your voices to be heard. And, well, yeah, that's all I wanted to say. All right. Yeah, once more. Until next time, guys, stay wholesome.